Hey everyone, welcome to a special Thanksgiving edition of Talking Cardboard. On this episode, we're going to talk about some must-play or must-suggest games for the holiday season. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Talking Cardboard. We're going to be talking about our Thanksgiving games that you're either suggesting or definitely playing in this holiday season. If you like any of our content, click the like button below, subscribe, leave a comment. We love interacting with the community. On my left, as always, is Cory. I'm Jurch, and joining us in Studio A is Nick. Nick, glad you could join us live.
It's great to be back, guys.
In this video, we're going to be talking about games that you should be suggesting to family if you're getting together for Thanksgiving, Christmas, any of the holidays that are coming up, maybe games you're looking to try. We're all putting our own little spin on this, as most people do during the Thanksgiving meal. So Cory, tell us how you approached your list and what's the first game on it?
Yeah, my approach to the list was a lower barrier to entry because when you're getting into more of a family setting or people who aren't typically used to playing board games very often, I think that the ease to teach or how easy or simple it is to teach or learn a game is very important, and also the player count. I took that into account as a big consideration because you're at Thanksgiving, so you're around family, relatives who you haven't seen in a while. All my brothers come to Thanksgiving there too. So I wanted to make sure that the player count was high enough to include the majority or the most amount of people as possible. So.
Excellent. And we love that idea of bringing games together that are inclusive and flexible for a larger number of people. Nick, how did you approach this list?
I took a very similar approach to Cory in that player count obviously is going to be a little higher than what I would typically recommend for games that I want to play, just because you're going to have more people around during Thanksgiving. And then, as Cory also mentioned, degree of difficulty of the games is going to be a little lower because you're going to have a lot of family members that typically aren't used to playing hobby board games, at least in the case of my family. Maybe some of your families are into board gaming, and that's not an issue.
And we're jealous.
Yeah, I'm jealous too, so good for you if that's not an issue. But definitely those are some of the things that I'm going to be taking into account.
And it sounds like we're, catching a bunch of different groups of people here. My list of games are ones that I will be making sure get to the table at some point during Thanksgiving, because my family they're not really gamers, not in the traditional kind of hobby board game sense. So it's taken me some time to find games that I really am able to get them to the table and enjoy. Some of them are larger player counts, but it's games that are tried and true for me that I can kind of rope my family in particular into. Without any further stuffing or appetizers, Cory, what's the first game on your list?
First game on my list checks off both of the boxes I talked about in the beginning of the video. High player count, low barrier to entry, and it is the Resistance. Oh. Either the Resistance or the Resistance Avalon, either one is great. It plays 5 to 10 players, so that playing up to 10 player count is really huge for that Thanksgiving setting. Some of the mechanisms in the game might be a little bit confusing at first, but after a couple plays of it, each game only lasts a few minutes at a time, I think people really start to grasp it, get the core concept of how to play, and it's a blast. A lot of yelling, a lot of banter back and forth, but I think it's a fun one to get people energized around the table. More of a maybe end of the night type of game.
Yes, definitely.
So if you're going to get angry, you can leave angry and not take it out on anybody, but that is my first pick.
And even though that's one of my favorite games of all time, I don't think I'll be able to bring that one to Thanksgiving for the exact reasons that you're bringing up. My family, it would get really intense, probably a lot of sleuthing going on. And if it's not ending the night, then it'll create a lot of probably arguments and disagreements. And I can't believe you lied to me. Yes. So fun for a game night, probably not going to work for my family's Thanksgiving meal. Nick, what's first on your list?
So I wanted to try to play a game that was familiar to a game that many people are familiar with, which is Monopoly, but different enough for my sake because I want to play something that interests me, and that's Acquire. Acquire to me is like the hobby board gamers version of Monopoly. Many people are aware of the rules of Monopoly. Acquire, if you're familiar with that game, kind of takes it to the next level and making it a little more realistic, makes a game out of what Monopoly really isn't. And I'm also, being at 3M, I want to pay homage to one of 3M's original board game titles because people probably forget that it was not originally an Avalon Hill game, that it actually goes all the way back to the 60s when 3M published Acquire for the very first time. Ooh. And that's my number 5, Acquire, because I think it's hobby. It's a great way to get people into the hobby because it's not too complex and it's still a fun game.
Got some fun facts thrown into there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And also, my family is not allowed to play Monopoly. There's an old family story on my mom's side that it was Christmas, must have been 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when they played Monopoly, and it got into such a shouting match that some family members were uninvited from the next Christmas.
Boy.
Yeah.
We'll try it for Thanksgiving then.
I can't handle that kind of yelling. My first game is on brand for the Thanksgiving meal, so it's about eating. It's Sushi Go. So it's nice and simple. It also has a large player count, like what you guys have been talking about with your game. The rules are easy to pick up. It's food oriented. You're picking a card, you're passing it. It can be really quick, simple. My family has already played it a whole bunch, so they like playing that game. And there's so many ways that you can mix and match and replay it again. A lot of replayability, simple, quick, fun, and it's at most local game stores.
Nice.
Next on our lists, Cory, what do you have as your second game that you want to be suggesting to people for Thanksgiving?
My next game on the list actually plays up to 12 players. It is a 4 to 12 player game. I've had lots of fun with it. Very simple to teach, but also it's a cool game where, and I'll get into the title here in a second, it's a cool game where you don't necessarily have to play for points or play for winners in the game. You can just all collectively play and have fun without having to get anyone upset for losing, and that is Concept. I don't know if I brought that to the table here in a while. One of our 24-hour marathons, maybe a few years ago I had brought it. But it has a huge board with a bunch of pictures on the board, and you are given basically a card that has a word on it, and the person cannot speak who's trying to give the clues onto what the word is. They can only put the different conceptual components of what the word consists of, or the phrase consists of, using pictures on the main board. And people have to collectively guess at what the phrase could be that they're looking at without the person saying anything, but I think they can only say yes. So if they're on the right track, you can say yes, you can't say no or anything else. But as soon as they get on the right track and you're on a time limit, it's like a 5-minute timer on your phone. If they can barely, squeak that out and guess what that phrase is just in the nick of time, it's a lot of fun and creates a lot of cheers around the table and a lot of fun. So that's Concept.
That's really interesting. I like that could get up to 12 people. So that's probably most of what your Thanksgiving family sizes are going to be like anyways. Nick, what's next on your list?
So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Cory suggested for his first pick, and that's a hidden role type game. And one that comes to mind for me was Bang the Dice game. Mm-hmm. That, again, like my first game, Acquire, is going to have some familiarity with a lot of people in your family if they're familiar with Yahtzee, which I think a lot of people have played Yahtzee at some point in their life. It's one of those mass market games people are familiar with. Same concept, because in Bang the Dice game, you're rolling the dice up to 3 times to get the symbols you want, but it adds, a little flavor to it. You have hidden roles. You could introduce either Secret Hitler or One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Werewolf being even for those larger family gatherings, depending on the family size. So obviously, Bang the Dice game, I think only goes up to maybe 8, and Secret Hitler also maybe only up to 8. But those games, any one of those hidden role games, typically great for larger family sizes and also relatively easy rules to learn.
Yeah. Well, especially for Bang the Dice game is you've got dice that are in front of you, you've got kind of your roll and a few things that are changing hands across the table. So it's really interactive. You can kind of start to role play it a little bit too.
Yes.
Whereas in some of the other ones like the Resistance there's not really a role playing. You're just kind of trying to be yourself or a facade of yourself. Yeah. But that one you can kind of role play a little bit, which I think is really cool and immersive for people.
You can literally role play it and figuratively role play it, both.
See, this is why he's the funny one. This is why you're the funny one.
Oh, and another thing too, when you're rolling the dice, if somebody's not familiar with the game, you can kind of help them out. Like, hey, you should maybe keep those for this reason.
Yes.
So that's kind of neat too.
Yeah. Yes. My second game on this list is No Thanks. This is a game that is a talking cardboard favorite. It's a really simple, quick game of kind of press your luck doing some of the math involved. It's great for larger groups of people. It's great for people who aren't gamers. I know that every time we've introduced this to a new person or a new group of our board gamer group, we just love the heck out of it. Yeah. It can be really high energy. It can kind of build some tension because it's such a simple, quick game. And you could be playing it for points, like instead of just who wins that game, you could be keeping a running total of scores. I know my family has done that because they really love this game. But if you want to be changing people in and out between watching football games and then playing a really light game like this, I think that one's a great just get to the table, play once or twice, and then kind of move on.
Yeah, very quick to play.
Number 3, Cory, what do you got?
Lucky number 3 is a game that goes up to 10 players, so I am pretty good with the player count here. I had 10, 12, and now 10 players here again, and it is One of John's favorite games. I wish John were here to weigh in on this one, but it is When I Dream. He loves being blindfolded, and who doesn't? So in this game, you've got one person who's blindfolded, and the rest of the table is whether or not you're a fairy or the boogeyman trying to get the blindfolded person to guess the clue card correctly or incorrectly. And based on the number of times you can get them to guess correctly or incorrectly, you can get points for that. Again, another game you don't necessarily have to play for points. You can just have fun with it. And even when you're blindfolded, it's fun to kind of listen to everybody's clues and try to pick out the ones that are trying to throw you off versus the ones that are not trying to throw you off, and to guess as many cards as you can. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I think that's where I get the most enjoyment out of that game, is trying to figure out what other people are doing. And some people are way off with their clues, with their rolls, or some people are playing it perfectly, and you think, why couldn't I have done it that way? That's a fun kind of game where it's layered in different ways you could get enjoyment out of it.
Yep.
Nick, what's your third one?
So I'm continuing along the trend of picking games that are going to be familiar with hopefully most of your family. For this next pick, I'm going to be recommending a trick-taking game. Specifically, I'm going to suggest Niet, which we've played before. And I take credit for introducing that to Talking Cardboard. But that does only go up to 5 players, so if there's other trick-taking games out there that allow for a higher player count, then that might be a great idea as well. The Crew, I think, can only go up to 5, but that's another great trick-taking game. I have a game in my collection called Pacific Typhoon, I want to say, from GMT Games, and it's like a war-themed trick-taking game that actually plays up to 8, but unfortunately that game, I think, has a lot of rules to it, so it'd be probably a little difficult to crack open for Thanksgiving, so that's why I'm specifically saying Yet. But in general, I think a trick-taking game is great because for my family specifically, my grandparents and parents love to play the trick-taking game 500, which uses a regular deck of cards.
Yep.
So they're going to be familiar with that mechanism of trick-taking, and I'm sure that's going to be the case for a lot of your families as well. Therefore, maybe consider a trick-taking game on Thanksgiving.
And nobody ever gets angry in trick-taking games.
Absolutely not. Everyone leaves the table perfectly happy,
Yes.
Well, but Niet, like you bring up 500 or euchre or things like that, that might be kind of a Midwestern, Scandinavian heritage thing. However, we all have our different experiences with that, and Niet is one that my family, especially the other older generation in my family, really enjoyed.
That's a good one.
Because it's kind of 500, but it changes it just enough you're on your own, or you're kind of changing, making it more dynamic. That is an excellent one that almost made my list. My third one is kind of a wild card because I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to get it by Thanksgiving, but it is the game Soria, which is new. It was Kickstarter backed at the beginning of the calendar year, and I got an update this week that said it should be arriving in the next couple of weeks. It's a dinosaur themed. It's loosely like kind of Jurassic Park without having the IP and paying for that type of stuff. My family loves Jurassic Park and dinosaurs, and if I could just pull this game out saying, hey, this is completely new, it's like Jurassic Park, I think I could coax at least 1 or 2 plays out of it from my family, even if they don't like the rules, the mechanisms, or anything like that. The fact that it's a completely new game and I have it bring it to the table, I think I might be able to get a couple of plays out of it, and we're obviously going to be playing that here once it comes and then reviewing it, but that's kind of a wild card on my list.
Yeah.
Number 2, we're over halfway done. Cory, what's your number? Well, I guess they're not in an order, but what is your fourth game that you're mentioning?
Yeah, second from the last game here, and Nick briefly mentioned it. It only plays up to 5. It is trick-taking, but it's cooperative trick-taking, and this is the Crew Mission Deep Sea, or you can Quest for Planet 9 is the first game, but either one is just fine. I like Mission Deep Sea a little bit better, but again, another trick-taking game for all the reasons Nick said. Trick-taking is kind of a collective type of mechanism or a game type that all generations can understand. Or one moment or another in your life you've played it, but it's cooperative too, so you really feel like you're working together in this game. It can be a little bit of a downer if you're new to trick taking, making the wrong play for your team and that sort of thing, but as you get more and more the hang of it, and with help from others, I think the cooperative aspect of it can really be a fun thing for a family setting on Thanksgiving.
The one thing too that I really appreciate about the Crew Space One, Space One, and maybe it's the same for Mission Deep Sea, because I've yet to try that one, is that when you do go through the scenario book, it kind of introduces the rules as you go, and
increases the difficulty.
It increases the difficulty. So it's a nice way of getting acclimated to the game, and that's another reasons why it's a great game for beginner, for
Yeah,
less
and
experienced
Mission
settings.
Deep Sea kind of improved upon that even a little bit, in my opinion, because it has a deck of difficulty cards, and you can tailor the difficulty no matter if you just jumped into the game, midway, or if it's the beginning of the night or end of the night, you can really tailor the difficulty depending on who you're playing with.
Yep.
Nick, what is the fourth game that you would think you'd bring to the table for family?
So this is kind of a broad and specific choice. In general, I think a cooperative game is a great idea for a Thanksgiving, because everyone's together, and everyone and Thanksgiving, typically when you're inviting people over on Thanksgiving, you want everyone to have a good time and to be friends, because a lot of times these are family members you may have not seen for a year since the last Thanksgiving, and that might be the only time you see them for another year, so you want to leave on good terms. So a cooperative game typically provides a good experience where everyone is working together. The specific game that I'm going to mention here is Flashpoint Fire Rescue, because it does play up to 6. I honestly have not tried it up to 6, so maybe it does get kind of bogged down when playing with 6. I could potentially see that being the case. Nonetheless, it's a cooperative game that introduces the game to you with family rules, which are pretty simple.
Okay.
And then it has a more advanced rule set in the base rules of the game. So relatively easy game for people to learn. So even if you have family members that have never really played any kind of hobby game before, kind of a great entry level game for them to get into the hobby. There's probably other cooperative games that also fit this same bill of being cooperative.
But the theme of that one is a good theme for family. You're putting out fires in buildings or houses.
Yeah,
it's a nice
in
theme.
case the kitchen starts on fire because the turkey.
I was going to say, Thanksgiving is one of those times when you're getting more fires than the regular day.
Yep.
Now, oddly enough, the next game that I'm suggesting follows a similar philosophical broad topic and then a specific example of it. And I'm thinking legacy games.
Okay.
Because my siblings and I especially, we like playing legacy games. I know we've played some legacy games as a group, and between Thanksgiving and then Christmas, you're going to probably see the same people a couple of times frequently.
Yeah, that's true.
So my siblings and I started a Betrayal legacy about 6 months ago. And then with life starting up in the fall, like school and teachers and stuff like that, we haven't played it in a while. But I'm pretty sure between Thanksgiving weekend and then a couple of times leading up to Christmas, we're probably going to pull that one out again. I really like legacy games. It tells a story that the game progresses as you go along with each iteration. My family kind of likes the horror of the Betrayal at House on the Hill. So if you have family that's coming in from out of town that's going to be staying the weekend, like you've got cousins from Wisconsin, they're driving 4 hours and they're spending the whole weekend with you guys, you can pull this game out and then play like 2 or 3 iterations, and then you'll see them probably for Christmas or between Christmas and New Year's and say, hey, be ready because we'll be playing 2 or 3 more times and powering through this campaign. So I like legacy games. I think one like that is one I'm definitely going to try to get to the table around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And our final game in our top 5 games you're going to be suggesting for family or you'll be playing over Thanksgiving. Cory, start us off.
I could not have this list without mentioning this game. Every time we've brought it out, just loads of fun. Brand new gamers, people who don't game very often, we still bring it out, teach them it. They can learn it within 30 seconds and they get the hang of it. And it is No Thanks. I had to mention it. I had to mention
Love
it.
it.
It's just so simple, but so satisfying and fun. Everybody has a good time. Even if you lose in the game, it's not a big deal. Like I think you were saying, you can kind of tally up the games over time and see who played it better over a longer period of time. Because each game is just so fast. I feel like it only plays in 5 to 10 minutes, and you're done that quick. People can jump in and jump out. If they have to go eat some food or go watch TV for a little while, somebody else can jump right in and fill in their spot just as easily. So, No Thanks. A fantastic game.
Yeah, and a great way to kind of be capping off that list is reiterating a game I already said. Nick, what's your last game?
So for my last game, I'm going to piggyback slightly on my previous game type, which was a cooperative game experience. And for this last game, I'm going to suggest one of the Unlock types of games or escape type games. So either the Unlock franchise or Exit the games or Deckscape, any of those. Typically they at least go up to 6 players, I think, maybe even more for some of them, I'm sure. What's great about those games is that there really are no rules, so it's pretty much everyone working together, and it's cooperative, so again, everyone ideally is having constructive time with each other, but you don't even have to really worry about the rules, so that you don't eliminate that barrier of entry as well. And then also another specific suggestion, kind of along the same vein as Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which again, no real rules. Also great for setup. There's really no boards or pieces, and you don't need a huge table for those types of games typically either. So exit style / adventure type game like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is my last pick for Thanksgiving.
That's a
type
good
game.
pick.
I didn't even think of it. Yeah, the escape room style games. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Cool.
I know we definitely don't play enough of those, mostly
No.
because
Yeah,
I
we don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to play more of those.
Yeah, that would. And I'm going to finish off the list with probably my mom's favorite game, and that's Cursed Court. It's a simple game. It's kind of a roulette style where you're predicting what results are going to come up, and then it's paying out on a roulette board the points based on what shows. My mom is not a gamer at all, but for whatever reason, she loves kind of messing with my dad, messing with us kids, with trying to make some of these bets and predict what's going to be there or throw us off the scent. And it's just, we barely care about the game itself anymore. It's just the ways we're messing with each other, trying to get in each other's heads, and listening to my mom laugh and just hearing her have a good time makes everybody else have a better experience. And that's what these games are all about. It's having a good time with people that you care about or with people you're forced to be with, you know, because everybody's got that family member.
Mm-hmm.
Or is that family member if they don't know of that one? From all of us here at Talking Cardboard, we wish you a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. Play some of our games, play some different ones, and suggest which ones we should have on our list for next year. Thanks for watching.